Hello and welcome back to the Battle Room. I'm the Battle Room, and today I am joined by Alex. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good, doing good. There's a lot of Alexes though. You might need to mention my last name or
Lexicon
something.
VGC. Lexicon VGC. Obviously, Lexicon VGC also is an amazing coach and a streamer. Check him out below. But today we're doing a tier list. So we've got all the restricteds. I thought we'd start off plain and simple. Tier list video. Let's just talk about the legendaries. Obviously, we're going to talk about pairs and all that, but mostly just ranking how good they are individually in this format because we've got a double restricted format here. Reg-Eye is here to stay for 3 months.
It did say it's ending after Worlds, so
True,
maybe
true.
there's hope on the horizon. But for the time being, we're gonna have our fun with it. The fun part about any new format is that it's always fun for the first tournament, and so at the very least, it's gonna have that new format feel. We're gonna have a good time pairing things in ways that we haven't gotten to do before. A lot of the new restricteds are really strong. And so obviously that's going to be a big question, like what are we pairing with the bikes? Do you want to not use one of the bikes? Are the Calyrex still the most broken thing? We're going to get to the bottom of that, of course.
Of course, yeah, I do think this one does have a lot of fun. Like, I've played a little bit, you've played much more than me. But, like, very early on, it just feels like everything is kind of just a clusterfuck. Like, it's just random shit paired with random shit. You're like, oh, I can put Zamazenta with anything. I can put Miraidon with anything. And you really are seeing, like, no super strong well, obviously there's some strong pairs, but like nothing like everyone is trying everything still. It's just completely up in the air. So let's get to the bottom of this. Let's start with Mewtwo. Dude's ass, right? Like we don't have to.
Yeah, just worse than Calyrex.
Yeah, he's worse than
Shadow
Calyrex. Lugia, ass. I think
it's
safe.
better than Mewtwo, but like still not worth using.
Yeah, I think our D tiers where we'll pie them in there. It's not gonna be ordered. We don't need to talk about them.
Yeah.
Ho-Oh, how do you feel about Ho-Oh? I think this is the first one that's like pretty legitimate.
Yeah, I think I still have Ho-Oh in C, and like I think it is like going to be better now that doesn't have to carry the full weight of being the restricted of the team. The second restricted role is pretty good for Ho-Oh. Has things like Tailwind, it can stall with Recover. Regenerator is an amazing ability to have on your restricted Pokemon, but and then also the fun thing about Ho-Oh is that it stacks up really well into other restricteds. It has a really high special defense stat, so it does really well against Shadow Rider. Really high, or really good typing for dealing with things like Zamazenta and Zacian, resisting their stab attacks and dealing a lot of damage back with Sacred Fire. So like it's really good against those other restricteds. It just doesn't always hold up against the non-restricteds, and Miraidon is still going to be kind of everywhere. Not only can Miraidon one-shot you, but it resists both of your stab attacks that you could fire off in return, so it has to be played very carefully.
Yeah, I agree. He does have that, like, you're right, he is good into a lot of the restricteds. Like, he is annoying to deal with. But I think being weak to Urshifu sucks, but he does have synergy with Sun. I could see Ho-Oh hitting top 8 of a tournament, though. I really could. I don't think he's going to be going super nuts, being like a mainstay mon, but I think we could see him around.
Right, definitely better than what we were seeing in the previous format. So I wouldn't, completely laugh at a team that has it just for the, having it. But it's also not something that's going to be one of the first things I want to test because it doesn't seem like it'll be as game warping, as able to just take control of a game.
Yeah, that's true. Like, in the past format, you definitely are like, wow, I just got a free win at the regional. We take those. But now it is more like, it's a little bit more respectable. I don't think there's too much to say. Like you said, he's really strong into some of them. Sucks into other restricted, specifically Miraidon. So we'll have to see. I think he's usable, though. He has good stats. And Regenerator, like you said. He's viable.
Yeah.
He's viable. Now, Kyogre. How are we feeling about Kyogre? I think Kyogre, near the end of the last regulation, was starting to pick up some steam. It was definitely like a super legitimate, like... It was starting to become a contender of one of the better restricteds. And I think in this format, it does get a little better, but I think its lack of speed does hurt it a lot. I think it's got to just be like A or B.
Yeah, I'd say it's still probably A. I'm not 100% sure. I guess like I could see a case for B. Like it's definitely not S. It's the main thing annoying for Kyogre is that there are these strong dragons, and you are able to fit a strong dragon onto your team even easier. Both of the bikes are giving it a really hard time, whether it's Koraidon resetting its weather or Miraidon forcing it to Terra. However, it does get the best dragon killer partner to stick next to it, like Zacian, which we'll get to later. Zacian is going to be a very good partner for it to help keep those things in check. And so because of that, I feel like it probably belongs in A. Maybe it won't be seen on as many other combinations as some of the, like, you know, restricted that maybe land in S tier. But it can still be good with like either of the Calyrexes. And then like probably either of the dogs as well, Zamazenta and Zacian. So yeah, still doing well all these years. You know, Kyogre's never going to be bad. Water Spout's just busted. It's the strongest spread move.
It is. And it has Torn got better. It has Bleakwind Storm. Torn Ogre's a classic. You can help shut down Koraidon a little bit with the Rain Dance. So like I think it has, you know, it has its footing. I do really think that part of its issue is being slower than like every single new restricted that has come out. Like both the bikes, Zacian, Zam, hell, even Eternatus, like it's slower than all of them. And then Terapagos shuts off the weather. So it just kind of sucks that the last like 2 gens are just like, because they're all kind of neutral into Kyogre as well. Like Zam does a ton of damage to it. So does Zacian. So do the bikes, obviously, like you said. So I guess the Ice Rider, Ice Rider's the one exception. He's slower, but even then, yes. I like you said, it's not as flexible, right? It has kind of a not a set comp, but like it is like clearly that's one of the stronger things for Kyogre is being paired with Zacian. And it's kind of a boring one-dimensional Pokemon that does its thing. It presses Water Spout. How do you feel about Groudon now? Now, because Groudon, Koraidon, I do think both of them have went up in value in this format. Same with Kyogre a little bit. But how do you feel about Groudon? Obviously, Koraidon, they do different things. But we're talking about Groudon now. How are you feeling about him? Is he? I think he's slightly worse than Kyogre, right?
Yeah, definitely a B or C tier. That's the big question because I am not super convinced by it. There's a lot of things holding it back. Same kind of middle of the road speed stat that Kyogre has. Obviously, they have the same speed stat, but yeah, that's not doing it any favors. And you know, Koraidon, a much better way to deal with Kyogre because you know we've been setting Sun on Kyogre and just taking like Water Spout for super effective damage in the sun, like for 50% for so long and saying like, yeah, this is good enough, like, you know. But now you have the option to take a resisted Water Spout in sun with Koraidon, and it's just a lot more comfy. The speed stat of Koraidon is a lot more competitive. It really just is a matter of, you know, what do you want to pair with sun? If you want to use like Miraidon in the sun or honestly, it's probably just Miraidon, but like I'm just thinking about like, you know, if you just don't want to like double dip on dragons, I could see Groudon being cool to pair with Miraidon. But other than that, yeah, it just doesn't have a lot of things that it's doing better than Koraidon. It has ground coverage as opposed to what Koraidon's doing, but like they're both hitting Incin super effectively, I guess. The slower speed stat really holding it back, and it doesn't really belong on Trick Room teams. The old archetype that used it that might see a slight resurgence is Lunadon. They were a fun pair, but I'm not sure if I'm not sure if people are just having fun and doing well with it just because it's early format, or if because it's legitimately strong. I think time's gonna have to tell with that one. But yeah, where do you think, B or C?
I think it's B. I think it's like C is like where like I think Groudon has a place. Like Miraidon is easily one of the best Pokemon in the game, and having something that does do super well into it is valuable. And it is kind of like budget Koraidon in a way. Like it's still powering up Flutter Mane, it's still powering up Raging Bolt if that's what you're using. Well, I guess probably not usually Raging Bolt, but maybe if you're using Lunala. But yeah, he's kind of like, he's good in Miraidon, so I instantly kind of have to say that he's probably B. I think we could see it going deep at some tournaments, but having to hit Blades is like honestly the rough part about all this, because all the other legendaries have 100% accurate moves, even Kyogre with Water Spout, but Groudon does not, and I feel like that really just holds him back in the modern. Like, it's just like, why would I use that? I'd rather just avoid losing a tournament to missing my moves. So I feel like a lot of players think that way too. They're like, I'm just gonna lock in one of my horses and something else that hits 100% of the time.
One other thing holding Groudon back is it got a cool new toy in Heat Crash, a really good move for hitting non-restricted Pokemon. But now that there's going to be twice as many restricteds on each team, Heat Crash gets a lot less value. It was a really good move to not rely on Precipice Blades, but if you have to Heat Crash into the opposing, you know, Miraidon or something else, basically, is it going to be able to do enough damage? Zamazenta is a very heavy Pokemon that you're not going to be able to hit very hard, so yeah.
He's just not.
But at least it's doing better than Rayquaza.
It's true. Rayquaza is he just D? He's like not really used. Well,
I don't think
He's got to be
it's not the. I don't know if it is. Yeah, it's not the like Ryogre days of like we were talking about old combos that were strong. It doesn't have that mega. Its speed tier is not very good. It doesn't have the bulk of restricted. It's like as bulky as Calyrex Shadow, but like 8 times slower, with a single target move that reduces its defenses. Extreme speed, definitely solid. But we're not really like, we're not in the Weather Wars era of VGC anymore. Like, yeah, Koraidon is setting up the sun quite often, but it's really not doing enough for its partners. I could see maybe it being funny with like Shadow Rider if you really want to deal with like the opposing Flutter main. You can turn off their booster energy essentially. But yeah, I don't know. I'm struggling to see like I can't even think of like viable pairings for it. So I'm not even sure where to go with it. I think it probably just goes down here, D.
Yeah, I mean, like before we saw it kind of have a niche like with the extreme speed set, or yeah, it was really just as the extreme speed. It was kind of good into Shadow Rider, but I don't know. I don't see it having much value in this format. Like, and also I think Fergraph is definitely a really, really good Pokemon again. And I mean, not that it was kind of dying down a little bit, but Fergraph's good. It ruins that set. Like you said, you're really not shutting off weathers. You're like, awesome, my Kyogre can hit you with Water Spout neutrally against what, Miraidon, Shadow Rider. Like, Sun just isn't as important as it was, and neither is Rain. So he's just D tier. There's not much to say about him. I mean, we talked about him a lot for not much to say, but
True.
He was the GOAT.
D for Dialga? Is that the big question? I actually don't know if it is. I think that I would be okay with putting this in C, and you can probably just put the two of them together. I think that they function somewhat similar. The question is, do you want slightly better stats at the cost of your item? Like, you hit harder because it's effectively kind of like the masks that the Ogrepons use. You get a boost on both of your stabs, and then you also get, but like if you run the other one, you get to actually hold an item depending on what you're looking to get done with your Dialga. So the thing about Dialga is that I think it's really cool against certain like popular archetypes potentially, like Miraidon, Ice Rider. They're running Terra Fairy on the Miraidon usually, which gets hit by Dragon and Steel. The Ice Rider also gets hit by Steel. So it can do a lot of damage and also take hits while it's doing it. The main draw of this Pokemon is going to be telepathy. And are you using that to enable, Discharge with a Miraidon, Earthquake with an Ursaluna? Pretty much just those, but yeah, it's maybe Earthquake with your Groudon so you have a more accurate and reliable spread move. Anyways, I think it's like about as viable as Ho-Oh, which is why we have it together with it in C. I don't think it's going to be on that many builds, of course.
No, I don't think so. I do think you're right, though. It does have some value, and it's like it says Trick Room, it gets telepathy, Ursaluna can go nuts. Like you said, it's good in Miraidon. It's instantly like kind of on the list. I think you could see it. I think you'd have to come up with a really creative build, but we've seen crazier things. I think it could be used. I think C is a good place for it. It's definitely not like unusable like the other three are.
Yes.
All right, now it's
however for its partner, yeah. I don't know if I believe in Palkia. First off, these ones I think are actually going to be tiered separately. The horse one, even though it's, horses are doing awesome right now, I think that one is just terrible. The problem is they gave it 20 more speed and it didn't move the needle at all. It's so hilarious.
What speed does
it went from 100 speed to 120.
Oof.
So it like nothing changed. It outspeeds Ogrepon and Zamazenta now, but like the usual Zamazentas. But yeah, that's it. Like it doesn't outspeed even Shenpao or Zacian or Shadow Rider. Like, yeah, that one's just bad. So then let's talk about the one that's worth talking about, the one that's in C here.
Okay.
I don't know if Palkia is going to be worth running, like, again, maybe more for telepathy shenanigans, kind of like the other one's doing. The cool thing about this one is it's really good against Incineroar. You can just, blast a Hydro Pump into it. But I think the big question for Palkia, maybe even a little more than Dialga, is this better than just running one of the bikes? Like the top dragons are those two bikes. And while this one's using a very different offensive coverage in Hydro Pump, That's also a move that's not the most reliable. It's single target when you're gonna be clicking broken spread moves. It's just like, it has a bit of a niche, but isn't enough.
I think it's really set back. Like if Spatial Rend was a water type instead, I think it would be much better. You could just run Draco Spatial Rend. You'd feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, like hitting Hydro Pumps is brutal. I think it, like obviously we saw it do extremely well with Ice Rider in the past format, but that's when we had Dynamax, and that's where it was shining as like this really niche answer into like Sun specifically, and also a really good Trick Room setter. It was just so weird how good it was, because it is just kind of a bad Pokemon like by today's standards, but it was working even with the horses. So
no, that's a good point. It was very anti-weather.
Yeah.
The fact that it quadruple resists fire and water can be really helpful, but those are just not as valuable right now. We are not dealing with nukes like G-Max Wildfire from Charizard and Sun, or Terra Water Life Orb, or not Terra Water, Dynamax, like the Water Spout big move that Kyogre did. What was that? Max Geyser?
Max Geyser,
yeah. Yeah. From Kyogre. Anyways, yeah. I think that it is doing better than the third in the trio, though.
Oh, Giratina, yeah. He is just...
I got nothing for these guys. I think, if anything, like, you get up to some funny stall shenanigans with the one that can hold an item, the regular Giratina, not the Origin form. Giratina Origin is just pathetic. It's I think its ability is Levitate, right? Which is just
Levitate, yeah.
It's not that valuable.
No.
Actually might be working against it. You don't even get grassy terrain from when that Rillaboom switches in. So, yeah. Nah, let's just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I think Reshiram and Zekrom are the same way. Like, they're basically unusable. This guy's one of the worst Pokemon ever. Kyurem White is, like, the next one that's, like, kind of worth talking about.
Yeah, so I think it's worth mentioning. I think, yeah, like, the Black and White Legends so far are all completely outclassed. Like, Zekrom, why would I ever want this over Miraidon? So, and then Reshiram. I was saying this the other day, but I think I'd rather have a Chi-Yu than a Reshiram.
That's fair.
The non-restricted.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, honestly, the story with these two ice ones is that they're both worse than Calyrex Ice. If you want a spread move like Blizzard, Blizzard needs support. Like when Glacial Lance just always hits, and if you want a physical ice type, I mean, just use Glacial Lance. So yeah, these both are just completely outclassed by Cali Ice. They actually arguably have a worse typing than Calyrex Ice. Let me double check. Calyrex Ice has 6 weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, no, I did the wrong thing. Weak backs. I'm checking Baxcalibur instead of typing in all that. But let's see. They only have 5. They only have 5 weaknesses.
Oh,
but yeah.
shit.
Anyways, I don't know. It just feels like they're weak to more relevant types. I guess like Fairy is a big one, and
Steel.
Yeah, I don't know.
Steel fighting, like the dogs tear them apart. Being weak to Dazzling Gleam from Miraidon, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Koraidon smashes them. Like they just suck. Like every restricted is gonna be able to hit them super effectively, outside of I guess the 2 horses, right? Like that's the big one. Oh, and I guess these guys, but yeah, they're just not. I feel like there's always gonna be one restricted dragons who will just clap them. I think the white one's better, but I just don't think it moves into like a usable tier, unfortunately.
I agree.
This guy.
So yeah, regular Zacian and regular Zam can both just be put in there. Looks like other Zam ended up over there. Where did you go?
I don't know.
Anyways. So yeah, Zacian though, the real Zacian. Let's talk about it. I think it probably goes up to A. The thing about Zacian is that it is a very good counter pick for Miraidon Ice Rider, which is probably going to be a common archetype. Hitting all of their usual types for super effective, mostly looking at Miraidon, regular type is weak to Play Rough. Post Terra, if it's Fairy, it's weak to Behemoth Blade. Ice Rider, weak to Behemoth Blade. So it really starts to limit their options. And, it's going to be a little bit harder to fit an Incineroar into every one of your game plans when your opponent has a Kyogre, or you have 2 restricteds that you want to be bringing to the battle, and, maybe 2 other Pokemon. So Zacian gets a lot stronger. Its speed stat is incredible. Yeah, it's just a really And it's, oh yeah, another thing that's really strong in double restricted that we've kind of yet to mention is that restricted Pokemon that have good natural typing that don't need to Terra often can allow that their restricted partner to Terra when need be. And Zacian has one of the best typings in the game. Steel Fairy is so hard to hit, so.
Yeah, he really doesn't need to change his type very often. Obviously, Swordfish was a classic combo. Myself, I was a big Swordfish fan in 2022. But yeah, I loved it. It just makes a lot of sense, right? Like, his worst matchup, the things he's annoyed with most are Incineroar, and Kyogre just claps that, like, so quick. And you really have to navigate the matchup really, really tightly to make sure that the Incineroar can work. And so I think that, yeah, I think he has some value. He's good he can force some Terras, whether it's Miraidon or Koraidon. His natural bulk's good, like you said. He can contest the horses pretty realistically. And yeah, like you said, Incineroar's hard to bring into Kyogre, and just kind of a weird, like, the team preview is so much different in these formats than it is in the prior one, even just because, like, 95% of the time you're bringing both, and if you're not bringing both, you have to have a really good reason, and it has to be a really bad matchup. And I think
Yeah.
like, Zacian's also a Mon who I think you can bring into any matchup and feel pretty good about it. He's gonna get value. If he gets one Behemoth Blade off, you feel pretty good if he's chipping things down. I think he generates as well too, like with the rain, like just getting rid of, like you said, the weaknesses godlike, or his weaknesses are his typing is godlike, but now he has one less weakness to even worry about. And I think Kyogre, Zacian, or Shifu Torn is just a really good natural starting place. And I think we're gonna see that's definitely one of the more solid restricted cores you'll see.
Absolutely. Is that E for Eternatus? No, it's not actually that bad. I think that Eternatus could probably be put into C tier, but I'm still struggling to find a niche for it. Again, speed stat not quite cutting it. I believe it's 130, so it's still slower than Shenpao and Fluttermane. And it's slower than the bikes. So slower than Zacian, slower than Shadow Rider. So like you gotta ask, like, what is this doing for me? And I don't know. I mean, I don't feel like it deserves D tier, but I also am really struggling to think of anything that this Pokemon's doing that is really cool. It is the non-restricted killer is the best thing. You know, it's really good against Rillaboom, really good against Urshifu, really good against Incineroar if you're running the Meteor Beam set. But against other restricted, it's kind of the opposite of Ho-Oh, you know? It's not doing that well against that many restricted. It's weak to Glacial Lance, weak to Psychic from Shadow Rider, weak to, yeah, I don't know, Dragon moves from the faster dragons.
Yeah, he just kind of sucks. I think he had a niche in the last format, actually, as, like, the Cosmic Power, like, setup king. I would lose to it sometimes. Like, I thought it was annoying as shit. But, like, I don't think it gets to do that, because there's 2 restricteds now, and so like I think it even loses that like power that it had. So I don't know. Dynamax Cannon isn't great. I think he's D tier. I think I'd rather use any of these guys. I just think he might be the top of D tier, but I still think he's D tier.
I agree with that.
All right, Koraidon. Do you think I feel like he's probably better than Kyogre. I don't think makes a conversation for S, but I do think he is a good partner for a lot of Pokemon.
Yeah, I was trying to like when I was talking about this on Tub Takes, but I think that Koraidon is super underappreciated by at least the people I was talking to there. You know, like it is just very very solid. The fact that you get to run this Pokemon while like basically enabling the abilities of so many strong Pokemon. I guess mainly looking at like Raging Bolt, it can hit really hard and take hits really well, so like it's a good partner to enable. And then like Chi-Yu, which isn't necessarily one of the Protomons, but it appreciates the Sun boost. You get to power those Pokemon up and have another restricted Pokemon to balance out your matchups. It just sounds like all your Pokemon are swinging for such high levels of damage, and Koraidon on top of that gonna hit pretty hard itself. So I feel like it just gets better and better, and yeah, I would say that it's like probably like a top 5 restricted, maybe like it might end up being the top of A. We'll have to see what we all fill out with S in essentially, but yeah, it's really good.
I think it's good, yeah. Like I've always been a big Koraidon fan, even in the past format, and I think he had his issues and he had his problems, but I think a second restricted might really patch those up and make him a top tier Pokemon, which I think he already. I mean, he won EUIC, obviously in a little unconventional manner, but he still won. And I don't know. I'm curious to see how he does shine in this format. I think Sun is going to be very good, and you're going to need to be able to beat it. I think he's also one of the better, more flexible restricteds. Like I can see him being paired with, the horses. Maybe not Ice Rider as much, but being paired with Shadow Horse or maybe he isn't flexible. Maybe it is just like, is he just Shadow Horse's best friend? Is that where he's mostly gonna shine?
I feel like it's probably mostly pairing with Shadow Rider. I think Ice Rider is not a bad pair for it.
He's okay.
But beyond that, it doesn't really seem like it. Somebody did well with a Zacian team in a Japanese tour.
Okay.
Right on Zacian, and then there's probably some goofy builds that involve it and the bike, but for the most part, I don't think
double bikes.
Some of the other top tier ones, it's going to be that good of a pair with.
I'm wrong. He's kind of weird. I think he could maybe go with Lunala, but he is a little bit like he just powers up all the other Pokemon so hard. Like Raging Bolt goes hard, so does Flutter. Like you get to abuse those Pokemon. I think he has good synergy with the best Pokemon, and he shuts down Urshifu, which is always a plus, and Incineroar and Rillaboom. So, he actually just bodies the 3 best supports. Oh, I guess Urshifu's not support, but he bodies them pretty hard. So I think he's got value. I love Groudon. Let's talk about the GOAT, Miraidon. He's easily S. There's no questions about that.
Yeah, the thing about Miraidon is that it does get its best friend Cali Ice now to pair with it. They complement each other super well. Both that, you get to set electric terrain so that your Trick Room is a bit safer from things like Amoonguss. And you have a very solid out of Trick Room mode if, you're not going that route and just blasting things with Specs Electro Drift. So, it's just a really good pair for that. And it probably can be paired pretty well with other things. You can just run like a really aggressive offensive team with Zacian or Shadow Rider. There might even be a case for Zamazenta. It can pair with quite a few of the top restricteds, and its power level is kind of unmatched, and its bulk and speed are very easy to work with. So I mean, I don't really know what else to say about it besides that it's going to be something that you have to be ready for.
Yeah, I mean, it won Worlds. It was good in a single restricted, and now I think it just gets better. Like, it literally can enable shutdown Amoonguss, be annoying that way, but enable some of the other good Quark Drive mons, such as Iron Hands, Bundle, I could see being used. Like, it has value, and there's already like a really standard established build in the Arobega team. I'm not saying you should just slot a restricted in, but like you can, and it creates like a pretty solid team. I think there's a lot of pieces there. I think it needs some fine tuning, but I think we can easily see like a couple of the same mons just sticking there, just because it is just so good. And Miraidon's just here to stay. It's just so broken. I think a lot of the old Miraidon players will find comfort in using the new, like using it in this format as well. I think we'll see a lot of success from just established Miraidon players popping off with this Pokemon, and yeah, like you said, it kind of synergizes with like a lot of the Pokemon, Zacian, Zam, Calyrex. It's just good. It's just it's good with the other good ones, so it just pops off. There's not much to say about him, really. He's just broken. What do you think about the turtle?
Broken, almost broken in a boring way, but yeah.
He is boring. He's good at what he does. I think there could be some exploration for different movesets and stuff. Mostly items too. I think this format actually enables a lot of different items to be used, and you can start to run like it's not as rigid, right? Like I felt like in the last format, it's like Mystic Water Kyogre, unless you're maybe AV if you have a really good reason. Koraidon was mostly just Clear Amulet the whole time. Miraidon was only Specs, but I totally could see like whether you're running Scarf or you're running Covert Cloak, something like that. I think you could get some insane value on a Miraidon, and just changing up the set just a little bit could really. I think we're going to see different types of Miraidon teams.
I agree.
Turtle, good or bad? I think kind of really mid.
Yeah, I don't have a spicy turtle take. I think that this Pokemon is pretty... You know what? I guess the spicy thing is that maybe it's a little better than people are giving it credit for. I think you put it above Groudon in B. It's doing okay. So I tried it out the other day, and the CM set is really strong at countering certain like Zamazenta Shadow Rider teams, you have to still be careful because yes, the Zamazenta can wide guard you, and yes, the Zamazenta can body press you. But as long as you're, playing with your other restricted or using your supports well, you can make that work. And it's very good at targeting some of the top archetypes. Then also there's the spec set, which if you pair that with Zacian, people are looking at running like very aggressive teams featuring those. Zacian really good at pressuring out certain Terras from like Ice Rider and Miraidon, and if they Terra, Terapagos is just going to feast. So, and also Zacian, as we mentioned before, is a restricted that doesn't need to Terra very often, so Terapagos can kind of just have it. So yeah, that's the biggest thing holding it back is unlike Zacian, it is the most Terra like hog restricted out there more than any of them, but it's maybe stronger. People are just gonna have to play it a little bit differently. You can't play like that CM Terapagos team that was like all in on it, like without any other game plans. Maybe you can if that Heatran becomes a second like restricted instead. But I don't know. That was a much slower pace of gameplay than I think we'll be seeing for most of Regulation I.
Yeah, Regulation I right now at least feels like everybody's just doing insane fucking damage every turn. They have like 2 nukes just aimed at you. So I do think that like you can't play that defensive style, but I mean I think you're right. I think it does have a niche in this format. Like being able to exploit the Terras and then punish them is really, really strong. And like it's even easier now that you have a second restricted to make them Terra, right? Because in the past you'd have to force it out with Flutter, Chi-Yu, or Shifu, but now you're like, hey, there's a Zacian looking at you right now. You have to Terra, otherwise you're gonna die to play rough. And so
Yeah.
I think it's neat. I like the Zacian Terapagos idea. That sounds really fun. But I do think he probably is just kind of sitting in B. I think he has utility with turning off terrains and weather is always useful. But yeah, I think he is probably better than people are giving him credit for. I don't think he deserves to go up much higher. But I could easily see him making a deep run if someone really optimizes like a turtle team that's punishing Terras. I think the spec set sounds kind of good. Obviously very exploitable. But I don't know. I think the turtle is definitely like a solid, decent mon.
Yep, I agree.
Lunala, is it A?
I think Lunala probably goes in A. It's probably below Zacian and Kyogre. I don't think it's as splashable as those ones, but people are experimenting with the sets. Obviously, Power Herb Meteor Beam still probably the most popular one, but you can do things like a support set running leftovers and wide guard. You can run Calm Mind still if you feel like that's viable. It's got wide guard. Yeah, like there's a lot of cool ways that you can play Lunala. You can play it like more towards like setting up Trick Room or not. It even does get Tailwind technically. I don't think you're going to see that too often, but right. And yeah, Shadow Shield is a very good ability. So, against anything that isn't a Shadow Rider, it probably doesn't need to Terra that often. And so its friends can use that if need be. And yeah, just a very good mix of offensive and supporting tools that you can't really find anywhere else.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of value. I think Lunala is a really interesting one because we have 2 restricteds now that have wide guard. But I think having access to Trick Room, Meteor Beam is amazing, obviously. Just into Incineroar feels so good. Like, Incineroar is your natural predator. So having that fucking Meteor Beam is so nice to just blow him up, get him out of there, at least threaten it. Whereas, yeah, and Trick Room's huge, wide guard. It has a lot of good util. I think it's also just such an incredible, like, Pokemon when it can change types. So I think we're gonna see a lot of it. I'd probably put it below Zacian. I do wonder what its best partner is. That's where it seems like it would struggle a little bit. But I could see it being played with Groudon, Koraidon, Ice Rider. You could.
It's not bad with Miraidon even. Yeah, there's a lot of
maybe
of
even
options.
Zam. I don't know. Like I feel like there are a lot of things you can do with it, and I think it is a really really deep mon. Like it has so much moves, so much utility, so many different ways to make it work. It can be support, it can be the main carry, the offense of the team, it can spam expanding force. There's so much it can do. So I feel like it has to at least be an A here. And I think even in the last format we underestimated it. It obviously almost won 2 regionals. It won 1. But I think it was probably pretty good the whole time. Maybe we slept on that one a little.
Def.
This guy sucks.
Go ahead and put these next ones in D.
Yep, get him out of here. I'm gonna throw this. Well,
no. That one I think goes in C. I think that one.
Let's skip it. Let's talk about this guy.
Yeah, about Lunala
Yeah,
or the
or
Dawnwings. Yeah, yeah.
Dawnwings. Yeah, yeah.
Dawnwings. So yeah, Dawnwings. I think it probably goes yeah in C here. I think that there are probably some good hard Trick Room builds using it. It
Mm-hmm.
has um a good speed stat for using that. It's a little bit stronger than Lunala, and yeah, Meteor Beam, Expanding Force. It's just basically going to be completely dedicated to hard Trick Room, and some of those hard Trick Room teams could use Lunala instead. But yeah, the power on this Pokemon is pretty insane, and that's pretty much it. Like it just hits really really hard. It's got a stronger special attack stat than Lunala, which helps it, but um, functionally somewhat similar, just slower, so a better Trick Room Pokemon. Hard Trick Room problem. We'll have to see. You know, it did really well in Reg G. So if that continues or happens at any point during the Reg I life cycle, then Luna or Dawn Wings is going to be a good pick for it.
I definitely think we also like indoctrinated some new hard trick room players after the success of hard trick room in the last format. That I could totally see people being really, um, into the idea of exploring hard trick room. And I think this is a really good place to start. Is this Lunala thing? It's just sick because it pairs so well with Ice Rider because you're just hitting them like so hard from the special side. They both get trick room. It's just nice on a hard trick room team. It does the job. We saw it do really well, I think, in 2023 as well in Japan Nats. I believe he got like second, right? I was close sheet, but this guy's not he's not fucking terrible. I think C's a good spot for him. I think
Yeah,
you're more likely to see him than those three. Um, okay, I mean,
definitely.
this is why you're here right now. Is Ice Rider? Where is he going?
That's true.
How good do you
I
think he's
I
going to be
think
in this format?
I think it's probably S, because I think both of the Calyrexes will end up there. Also, why do they have both Terapagos? I'm just getting distracted by that.
I don't know. I saw him earlier. I'm gonna stick with the one because he came up first. But yeah,
Yeah, that's the one that people recognize it by. I mean, look at that. That looks weird. Put it in D, dude. I
okay,
want to
I'll
look
get him out of here. I'll get him out of here.
at it. Yes, Ice Rider. I think Ice Rider, funnily enough, I think it gets like better and worse in double restricted. We talked
Mm-hmm.
about restricted Pokemon that like to Terra or not, and I think Ice Rider likes Terra a lot. It does have 6 natural weaknesses, so that's really a bit of a tough start. But at the same time, the Calyrexes are just so strong, and adding a Trick Room element to your team is also really strong. Some of the best restricteds are operating at this like way too fast speed levels. We talked about all the restricteds that are really fast but not fast enough being bad. Eternatus, Palkia, Origin Form or whatever. The ones that are really fast, they're very good because they hit you really hard, really fast. And what do they hate to see? Trick Room. Cali Ice, if it sets up Trick Room, the game becomes like, you've entered his domain and it becomes so much harder to deal with this Pokemon. So if people are running, two fast restricteds, like, the Swordfish team, and they find themselves across from a Cali Ice in Trick Room, paired with who knows what, an Iron Hands, a Miraidon, like it's going to start to get really scary really fast. And so you have to be ready for that at all times. The Calyrexes are just beasts. Their spread moves are so easy to pair things with, and so it's just a matter of like what do you want to pair with that. I think that Miraidon is going to be probably its best friend, but there's plenty of other options. I think it's decent with Koraidon, Kyogre, maybe even Lunala. People are going to cook some stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really flexible too. And like you said, Trick Room is just absolutely nuts. I think there's a lot of ways you can like guarantee setups as well. Committing your Terra, pressing Follow Me, maybe pressing Fake Out. Like Trick Room going up it's not easy. It can be costly, but you can get it up every game if you want it. And I think that he has value there. He's also just good outside of Trick Room. I think that's what sometimes people forget that, right? That he is just so good. Glacial Lance is so strong, and just spamming the move and chipping everything down for your other restricted is broken. So we'll have to see.
Mm-hmm.
I think he is pretty goated. He's pretty good. I do think he was probably not a little better, but like it was easy to play him in the last format. Just protecting him, making him press Glacial Lance as many times as possible was easy. So I don't know. I think that he definitely has a lot. I think he also, just like you said, has synergy with like you could run him with Kyogre if you wanted to. You could run him with Terapagos.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. He really is just so flexible. His typing's good. He's a little Terra Hog, but he can get the job done. It's just more of like how do you want to pair him and what's going to be the best build. We'll wait and see. Obviously, these two, the double S tier, are super good. They're good together. They're going to work together. So we'll have to see.
All right, so the next one, Zamazenta, I guess. Zamazenta. This is the funny one because I think it's very good, but if you want to like spice it up, you could put it in A. I'm not that convinced by Zamazenta being like amazing. Like, there's so many people in like my Twitch chat. I've seen it in the Showdown Room chat, like on Twitter, whatever. Everyone's like, "Oh, cool! So this is This is what Reg I is going to be when we get double restricted. Zamazenta plus X, Y, Z, A, B, C." And I'm like, wait, why does everyone think this? Why is it feels like I'm like the only. I'm gonna say something really crazy, but I'm like the only like person not part of this hive mind. Like, what are we? What am I missing? I think that the Pokemon is like, yes, like Wide Guard is strong and it's got incredible bulk, but when you're clicking body press with it, it's doing like about 70 to everything, and like that's sometimes not enough when it comes to some of these other restricteds that ended up in D tier. Like, I'm thinking of like Eternatus and I guess like Palkia and C tier, like these like single target attacks that aren't picking up one shots. Like, is that going to be enough? I think that that's obviously not Zamazenta's strong suit. It's the staying power. It's the wide guard that makes it super strong. And I'm not going to say that the Mon is bad by any means, but I don't think it's something that you put on every team just for the sake of it, basically.
I think that's fair. I think he is like, I've always liked him paired with like Chimpao, and like Urshifu and stuff. He has good, well-known partners in the last format. I mean, he got pretty stale in that format. He kind of fucking disappeared. Zamazenta, like going into the last regional in this next upcoming next weekend, you do not really need a Zamazenta answer. I don't think he's gonna do well. I don't think he's very strong right now. He's like kind of mid, and so I mean, we even saw MDB, the fucking Zamazenta hero, abandon him for hard DR. So I don't know. I think he's definitely a strong Pokemon. Obviously, this format's completely different. But at the same time, like, I don't know if Wide Guard's enough value where I'd rather just be like, yeah, I'd rather just have a Miraidon, and I'd rather just hit you with Electro Drift instead of pressing Wide Guard, right? Like, it is valuable, it is good, but I think something like Lunala, where I'm getting more utility out of it, getting Trick Room up, getting Trick Room, having Shadow Shield, just being kind of a better Pokemon sometimes, having better matchups into the other restricteds. Because he doesn't hit any of the restricted super effectively outside of, I guess, the steel move on the Ice Rider, right? Like, he hates Zacian, he hates Kyogre, he hates Koraidon. There's a lot of them that he dislikes, and I don't know. I think he's definitely good. I definitely am not going to move him from A, but I think time will tell on this guy, and I'm curious to see how he's going to do. Because I think you're right. I do think he's not...
The last one?
No, it's... Oh, the GOAT?
Yeah, I think this one is the top, actually. The thing about Shadow Rider is that it is the speed ceiling, and it's also, like, fake out immune. I think the first thing that people are going to have to realize is that I don't think Nasty Plot cuts it anymore. I think that move is good if you are, playing a Protect the King strategy with Cali Shadow. I think that's going to be a little too difficult to do now when they're blasting you with two restricteds at the same time, potentially. So I think that it's much better at being kind of like a late game cleanup, or like, just winning damage trades type Pokemon. Sash Chien-Pao has been good in a lot of formats because it's just really fast and it hits things hard while being faster than everything. And I think Sash Shadow Rider is going to just play that, but at a higher speed tier, and also be naturally fake out immune, and also have a spread move that is 120 base power. Not to mention that it has a lot of cool support moves. It also has some decent coverage moves. You can run Dark Pulse. You can run Shadow Ball to get around Wide Guard if you really want to. Or like a Grass move if you really want to prey on Terra Waters or Kyogre. Yeah, there's like ways that you can play Shadow Rider that aren't the same old like Nasty Plot sets we've seen really popular in Reg G. I think Specs, Life Orb, but mostly Sash are going to be everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does have a lot of depth too. Like, much like Miraidon, Ice Rider a little less so. That guy is kind of a clear amulet bot, depending on how popular Instant is. Obviously, we have the Never Melt Ice guy with me, but still.
True.
I think Shadow Rider has a lot of depth. It has a lot of good moves. You can run Encore. Fuck it, you can run
And
Trick.
Disable.
You could run Scarf. You could run Specs. There's a lot. It gets disabled. What the hell?
Yeah, I guess both.
Imprison. Sub. I think Sub could have some value depending on what your item is. Sash is really good too, like you mentioned, like Chimpao. There's just so many different sets that you can run to fit your restricted. I also think, like, looking at the list, I outside of the other Calyrex, because you legally cannot run them both together, I could see it being paired with every single Pokemon up till Lunala, right? Like you could seriously put it with Zam, Koraidon, Kyogre, Zacian, and it wouldn't be a bad team, right? Or even Miraidon, right?
Yeah.
It's just good with everything. Like you're like, oh, a fast special attacker that does crazy damage and I can just slap a sash on. Sure, I'll take it. You know, I'll put that on my team. So yeah, it's just so flexible, and I think that's why it deserves the #1 slot. I think it's the best Pokemon in the game, and it has been. I mean, the last format was pretty brutal for it. The one restricted was pretty hard. It never really got insane results. It won a regional. It did. It won 2 regionals actually back to back, but it never was like the favorite to win at any point, I would say.
It doesn't have very good, like, it doesn't, there are definitely like Pokemon that can wall it out, like dark types and normal types, and instead of forcing your Shadow Rider to deal with those by running either an awkward coverage move or, you know, positioning a non-restricted to deal with them, you can now just put a whole restricted next to it, and any of them can do the job if need be, you know. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get creative with solving Shadow Rider's problems with another restricted Pokemon. And nothing resists Astral Barrage except for exactly one restricted here. That is Terapagos, which is just chilling in B tier. They took away Yveltal, the only other restricted that can resist Astral Barrage. So yeah, Astral Barrage is just so spammable. And you know, when you have to use non-restricteds to respond to Shadow Rider and they're, you know, putting another restricted next to it, it's going to be difficult. It's not gonna be easy.
Wow, you're so right. I didn't realize that not a single legendary Pokemon besides Yveltal resists this guy.
Well, Terapagos, yes.
Well, yeah, Terapagos and Yveltal. Yeah, Terapagos is immune. But wow, I was just looking through all of them on the list. I'm like, holy shit, you're not wrong. And it's just so easy to chip things down. Like, you can use it as a late game sweeper. You can use it as the primary lead and just pick things off and let the other guy clean up, like you said. Like, it's just so versatile gameplay wise, build wise, and team wise. It's just so fucking good.
Yeah.
And it won the last time. It was double restricted. It did win Worlds with Zacian. Obviously, Zacian was she's not as good as she was that format. Obviously, with Dynamax, she was super important. But yeah, here I think Shadow Rider's gonna go hard. It's gonna go nuts. Wow. Yeah, that one's good. That guy's #1. I think if it's not #1, you're trolling. Otherwise, I think our list is pretty good. I'm content with all the way it's lined up.
Yeah, I think that this seems about right. There's a lot of like, I think there's more Pokemon in S and A than we've seen in like previous formats. It will eventually probably slim down to like people running the best versions of the best builds of the best combos.
Yeah.
But for the beginning here, it feels like there's a lot of routes. There's a lot of ways that you can go, and it's going to be really fun to see what ends up happening at the early tournaments to show like what combos are the best you have to beat, basically. There's a Victory Road tournament coming up that people are going to want to look at, and obviously, like, you know, official regionals, once those comes around, that's where everybody's going to, you know, put their chips on the table, whatever that saying is for poker.
Go all in. I'm not really betting that myself, but yeah, it's gonna be exciting to see. I do think we're gonna see, like you said, I would say I've made tier lists like this before. I think even in 2023. And a lot of times you usually only have like 1 or 2 S's and then like 3 A's, right? There's usually like 5 guys that are the dominant ones in the game. And right now, I would say that it really is anybody's game. I think you could even stretch down to B, right? You could use one of these two. They could win the first regional format. I would be a little surprised, but I wouldn't say it's out of the realm of possibility. Whereas in other restricted formats, it's like, yeah, dude, there's like 5 good ones. If you're not using one of those 5, you're kind of throwing, you know, like, there's not like I'm thinking about the last format. It was like Zacian Ogre, Zacian Groudon, Zacian Shadow Rider, and then like Palkia Ice Rider, and that was like kind of it. There was not. I might be missing some, but I guess Lunala. And it was just really like you're kind of stuck with those Pokemon, and so yeah, in this one it is definitely like it's kind of anyone's game. Any of those A guys could easily win a regional.
Yep.
So I'm excited to see. But that's our tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Alex, for joining me.
Of course. Yeah, no, this is fun. I'm going to be looking forward to playing more of this while it's fresh. It's going to get stale eventually because it's double restricted. But let's have fun for the time being. You know, you know.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I think all formats are fun for the first month at least. So we shall see. And yeah, also Alex coaches if you want to get coached by Alex, and he also streams regularly on Twitch. I'll link those both down below for you, so you can go check him out, and I'll link his Twitter so you can follow him. But thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys next time. All right, nice.
This is the battle room.